As the industry continues to reel over the approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States, our next guest joins to share insight into the regulatory process leading up to this moment. Joining me now is SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Jen.
Well, we've asked all the asset managers we've spoken to how they're feeling. How are you feeling now that this has finally gone through? It's been a decades-long journey.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that this is the end of at least this phase of the journey. It's been one that's way too long in the coming. So I'm happy the day is here that we have the approvals. And now that investors can tell us what they think of these products.
And Commissioner, I got to ask you what happened with the Twitter account the day before we got the approval. Any insight into what happened there?
No, there's been, as we've said, there was a hack, and it's something that we're investigating with the assistance of our law enforcement colleagues.
All right, I want to talk a little bit more about the approval now after it was announced. The commissioners, of course, Chair Gary Gensler, issued statements, and they were very, very different from one another. You and Commissioner Ueda were on the same page with the approval. Chair Gensler remained strongly critical, although he joined you in voting to pass this. And then Caroline Crenshaw issued her statement of dissent, saying that this is, quote, unsound. Reading all of these statements kind of paints a picture of strife within the walls of the SEC. Can you shed some light there?
Well, I think we illustrated that we're a commission of 5 people with 5 different perspectives on this issue, and I think we all express those views. Look, I think that it's good that we bring different views to the table. I was of the view that after the DC Circuit spoke, there wasn't a lot of wiggle room for us. We really had one way forward, and we took that way forward. I think we did it in a way that was begrudging, as opposed to graciously accepting that was the situation. But I think it also illustrates that the diverse set of perspectives on this issue illustrates that while the Bitcoin ETP decision has been made, there are likely to be difficult times ahead still for the crypto industry.
Well, in your statement, you criticized the process in which the SEC reached the decision. Can you tell us a little bit more?
As I've said for years now, I don't understand why we took so long to get to the place that we did yesterday, and I don't understand why we took the course that we took to get there. I've been a commissioner now for 6 years, and it's remarkable to me that in that 6 years, it's taken us so long, and it's taken so many hours of so many people's time, both at the commission and outside of the commission. And I think that's really problematic. And it's a time for us to sit down and say, how can we avoid this kind of thing in the future? We should not be using merit-based regulatory reasons to extend regulatory processes. That's not our job.
When you voice that, do you feel like you're being heard? And I guess in other words, do you feel like you're making an impact in your role at the SEC?
Well, look, I'm one of 5, and so I have my set of views, and I do try to convince my colleagues. Clearly, I haven't convinced all my colleagues that my view is right here, but I think it's important that I continue to voice it. And look, there are a lot of people in the industry who have been raising concerns, and I think it's important for them to know too that many of the concerns that they raise, I think, are valid.
You've pointed out the difference between the treatment of this ETP application and others. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I saw when I looked at the first of these applications to come across my desk was we've approved similar commodity precious metals based applications in the past. This really isn't different. You're not really supposed to focus on the underlying market in which the commodity trades, but you look at the exchange traded product market itself. And in this case, we didn't do that. We were fixated on the underlying Bitcoin market. I think that's problematic. And again, we're not making an endorsement of an asset when we approve an exchange traded product that's based on that asset. There are lots of exchange traded products out there that do lots of different things, and they're not all right for every investor. And that's why it's really important for people to understand our limited role. And when I say people need to understand that, I think it's both people within the commission and people outside the commission.
Can you give me a little bit more there? Why do you think that this was so different than the ETP applications that the agency has reviewed and approved before? Is it just the crypto industry, the unknown, that made this so different?
I mean, I think getting our hands around a new type of asset is it's a project to do that, and I think that it's understandable that there are a lot of questions about that. But again, we have to acknowledge the limits of our authority, and I think we just didn't do that. It's perplexed me all along, and I never knew what would get us over the finish line because we had dug ourselves into a hole of using reasoning that both didn't seem to be pegged to the statute and also didn't seem to be pegged to precedent of how we've dealt with these things in the past. And so I was uncertain how we would dig ourselves out. It turns out it took a court to dig ourselves out of this. And I think that result was the thing that pushed us over the finish line.
We saw in the market reaction to the news over the past 24 to 48 hours that folks are thinking a spot Ether ETF could be next. They're saying that the road to the spot Bitcoin ETF may make it easier for a spot Ether ETF approval when those applications come up. Is there some truth there, or do we have to start the process all over again?
Well, I mean, precedents matter, or they should matter, as I've been saying, they should matter. And when we look at new applications that come in, and it's typical that you'll see someone will do one thing and someone else will build on top of that, and so someone could do something else with a similar crypto asset, particularly with the focus on the interaction between the futures market and the spot market that was discussed in the order approving the Bitcoin application.
In 2023, we saw a handful of companies leave the US for other parts of the world that they say have more regulatory clarity, better regulatory frameworks. What would you say to those companies if you had to speak to them who are choosing to relocate because of lack of regulatory clarity here in the United States?
I mean, certainly I think it's a shame that people are leaving. I do think this is the best country in the world to build things, and we have lots of people from all over the world that have come here to do just that. But we do owe people a clear regulatory framework, and that's something that has not still has not been provided here. And there's some argument for saying you want to wait till the technology matures a little bit to develop a regulatory framework, but you need to have some kind of guide rails in place so that people can make decisions about what they can and can't do. And that's what I think we've really failed to do. Our answer has been to come in after the fact with enforcement actions, and that's just not the most productive way to do things. But what I would urge people to do is be thinking about what a good regulatory framework would look like. I do think there'll be a change of sentiment here in the US. And if there is, we need to be ready to go at that moment we're not going to have a regulatory framework just born immediately, right? But we need to have the conditions ready to build a good, strong, reasonable regulatory framework, and one that everyone has had a chance to contribute to building. I don't want it to be something that's designed in the back room of a settlement negotiation with one company. I want it to be something that is really lots of people have had a chance to weigh in and build a good regulatory framework so that some of those companies that have moved outside of the US can really seriously think about coming back to the US and working here, and also serving the American public with their products and services.
What's it going to take, do you think, to get that change of sentiment?
I mean, time may be one thing, but I really think we could also just see people coming to a realization that there is some potential, um, use for crypto. I think there's been a lot of frustration that we haven't seen more use cases, but at the same time, some of that I think again flows from the lack of regulatory clarity here. I think an environment in which there's regulatory clarity is one that really spawns um, more use cases and less of the bad activity that we want to avoid. And the technology is moving forward, and people are doing interesting things with it. So I think that will change people's minds as well.
Commissioner, I know you have to go, but I have to ask you, in 2025, your term is coming to an end. What are you going to do after?
I have no idea. Other than beekeeping, which is my aspiration, I have no idea.
Have you gotten your bees yet?
No, they have to wait.
Well, I look forward to that day. Maybe you can send me a jar of honey or something.
We can't jump the gun. I hope it doesn't take me 10 years to make a jar of honey, though. I hope I can that are
I hope so too. I think that has a shorter timeline for sure. Commissioner, thank you so much for joining us today.
thanks. It's great to talk to you.
That was SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce.